Welcome into episode 354 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott couldn't have been a worse start to the Bruins season. Last night in Florida, they lose 6-4. It felt like 6-1, 6-4
Might
to
as
the
well have been.
Panthers. It might as well have been 6-4 to the Panthers. The Panthers raise their banner. They come out with their heads on fire. You would think the Bruins would match that, but they didn't, and we'll break it all down here.
Yeah, it was ugly. And, I think we can probably just get right into our opening shifts because they're all tied to the game. And mine is that the Bruins have to beating the Panthers on the ice is one thing. Bulking up, getting bigger, stronger, all that. Like that was designed for matching up with the Panthers. They have to figure out how to stop losing mentally to the Panthers because they get into these games and it's like they can't decide if they want to play hockey or they want to try to fight the Panthers or like go out of their way to try to start stuff. And I tweeted this, I think during the first period, but it was 4-1 at the end of the first period. Game was pretty much already over. And it was like the Bruins came out looking like a team that was expecting and wanted a fight night where I think they thought like, okay, everyone's just going to be dropping the gloves all over the place. We're going to get our pound of flesh and, maybe we'll play an actual game next week. And the Panthers came out like a team that wanted to win a hockey game and get 2 points. And they did. And like the Bruins keep falling into these traps that the Panthers set where Panthers will agitate, go right up to the line. And then the Bruins cross the line, end up taking a penalty. Like, Matthew Tkachuk gets under Trent Frederick's skin. Frederick drops his gloves, is ready to fight him. Tkachuk just keeps his back turned, doesn't drop his gloves, and Frederick ends up in the box. And Trent Frederick says after the game that Matthew Tkachuk actually challenged him to a fight and then backed down once Frederick dropped the gloves. He said it was disrespectful to the game. I agree with Trent Frederick. Like, yeah, that goes against the code, the unwritten rules, all of that. Guess what, guys? The Panthers are going to break the code. They're going to break the unwritten rules. They don't give a shit. Like, this is who they are. They are very annoying. And they do things that are weaselly, that other players, who want to pump up their chest and say, like, we respect the game, might not do. Oh, well, the Panthers don't care. Guess what? They won the Stanley Cup last year. Like, at some point, you have to figure out how to beat them when they're playing that way because they're not going to change. They don't have any reason to change. They keep winning and they keep beating you specifically. So I think the Bruins need to, whether it's Monday or just moving forward this season, like just focus on playing hockey and beating them at hockey. Try to do that because you're not going to beat them at the mental games. Like they're too good at it. So stop trying to get them to drop the gloves when you know they're not going to. Stop trying to, agitate them after every whistle and start scrums all the time because you're going to end up in the box. Fair or not, like you end up in the box more often than they do because you're not as good at doing that stuff as they are. So just try to play hockey and try to beat them at that.
Scott, this entire time you've been talking, it's just reminded me of what you're saying. Reminded me of a scene from Talladega Nights where the Cougar's in the car. Literally, like the Panther is in the car, and it's this meme. You got to learn to drive with the fear. You gotta learn. They can't get over it. It's a mental block. The same way Ricky Bobby couldn't drive until he got over the fear. So that's the Panthers are the Panther. But yeah, sorry, I have way too many Will Ferrell quotes in my head. That's why that reminded me of that. But all right, Brian, I think you should go so I can stop laughing.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, Scott, you raise a good point, and maybe I'll save my thoughts on that for as we go into the podcast. But for my opening shift, obviously last night was a poor game all around for just about every Bruin on the roster. I do think, ironically enough, Trent Frederick was one guy who, from the start of the game, was engaged, at least mentally, right? And maybe he lost the mental battle at times, but I'm not gonna. I mean, he also got in the score sheet later in the game, and I thought was making plays outside of the Kachuk stuff. I wish I saw a little bit more of what Trent Frederick was doing from the Bruins leadership core. Because Scott, you say that last night looked like the Bruins went out there looking for a fight and the Panthers were trying to win a game. To me, it looked like the Bruins went out there for the most part like it was still preseason. And, it's one thing to watch Pasternak and McAvoy and Marchand, who only played like one period of preseason hockey, but go out there for a couple preseason games and just get their touches and whatnot. But that's not what last night was. And it's almost like I don't want to be condescending because they know it's the regular season. They know who they're playing. It's a defending champions. It's a team that's knocked them out 2 straight years. But just watching on TV, you couldn't really tell much of a difference between their preseason play and last night. I thought Pasternak was pretty disengaged, and I know he scored a goal at the end, but it was probably the ugliest goal he's ever scored. It was, in fact, he was shooting it to the slot and ended up off of skating in, so he's not going to be too proud of that one. McAvoy, again, just hasn't done a good job quarterbacking the limited power play opportunities Boston got. Gets turned inside out with Sam Reinhart's goal. Thought Brad Marchand, who look in Marchand coming off of 3 surgeries, little preseason time. I don't know. I just expected more from the leadership group. Brandon Carlo with the pizza up the wall that goes back the other way turns into the I believe it was the Jesper Boquist assist to
Gadjevich. Yeah.
Up and down. Carlo also got out-muscled by Sam Bennett, I think, on Florida's second goal. So, look, Korpisalo was not strong, but the Bruins leadership group needed to lead last night. There was some new faces in the lineup, but I just didn't think they did a good job setting the tone. And I know it's one game. I'm not overreacting. I'm just reacting. Like, we have to react to what we saw last night. And the team didn't play well, and I think it started with the leadership group.
For a second, I thought you were going to poach my opening shift at the end there. Korpisalo did not play well, as Brian said. And, I mean, Scott, I know you feel pretty strongly about this. I'm trying not to overreact to the first loss the same way I saw the internet react to everything like the sky was falling, especially a lot of what people were saying about Korpisalo. Now, he did not look good on several of the goals. The funny thing is it ends up being a close game. If he didn't let in at least two weak goals, this is probably a tie game after the first and second period, and it might have actually been a close game, which would have been a lot more fun to watch. But yeah, I just want to get you guys' first thoughts on the first actual game that Korpisalo has played for the Bruins, and where you think what is the outlook for him on the season, trying not to overreact too much.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't good. And yet, yes, he got hung out to dry. That the whole team stunk. They gave up too many good chances. Guys lost battles around the net. Brian highlighted Carlo getting out-muscled by Bennett. Trent Frederick lost inside position to Eetu Luostarinen on, was that the second goal or third goal? I don't know, one of the first period goals. So yeah, like there's too much of that. McAvoy just gets beat 1-on-1 by Reinhart. Like all of those things are not on Korpisalo. That said, the first 2 goals are bad rebounds that he leaves right in front. The first one, Sam Bennett's goal, he gets that shot with the blocker and it pops up off him and he has no idea where the puck is. Like just zero control of that rebound.
He didn't track pucks well at all.
No, and even like the Reinhart shorthanded goal, again, McAvoy gets beat, which shouldn't happen, but Korpisalo almost seemed like surprised by the shot. Like almost like he was like still trying to get set when Reinhart released it. And it beats him over the shoulder and his left arm barely moved. Like his glove didn't move on it. So yeah, I thought it was a rough game. I saw like quite a bit of people, almost defending Korpisalo, like saying it wasn't wasn't his fault. It was defense's fault. You know, you can't put this loss on him. And it's like they're not mutually exclusive. Like it's not like only one or the other could have been bad. Like it's possible that both the defense in front of him and Korpisalo himself were bad, and that is what I think happened.
Yeah, and I just want to correct what I said earlier. I mentioned the Carlo Bennett goal, and I think I may have said there was a second goal. Yeah, it was the first goal of the game, I believe. But the Sam Reinhart goal, I think, Scott, you mentioned he didn't look like he was ready for the shot. He was probably expecting a backhander, right? Because Reinhart's coming in on his backhand. He's seeing McAvoy close him off. The last thing he's expecting, I think anybody's expecting, is that shifty forehand to backhand or backhand to forehand snapshot that, never should have gotten through. It was a laser of a shot, but at the end of the day, to your point, Scott, I mean, you have a guy coming down one-on-one, you got to be ready for anything. But yeah, he wasn't good. The team sucked. Look, the Bruins defense, I mean, everybody, nobody was making any passes. Everybody was flat-footed. That was one of those games where, yeah, you weren't seeing any consecutive passes being strung together, at least for the first, whatever it seemed like 50 minutes. But it's tough to be a goaltender in that situation. At the same time, there's something called situational saves. I think when Pavel Zacha brings you within one after being vastly outplayed for the first period, and they come right down and score very quickly on a shitty rebound, that's a back-breaking goal. Sometimes the goalie needs to bail the team out, just like the team needs to bail the goalie out sometimes. And I think what does come to mind is if Jeremy Swayman is here to stay. So that's the big storyline, which is like, if he wasn't signed, there'd be a lot more panic right now. But the fact is, you do have Jeremy Swayman, but for the games that he's not playing, the Bruins got accustomed last year. Scott's mentioned it. I forget what the analytics were, but the Bruins, I believe, gave up among the highest high-end danger scoring chances in the league, and they were bailed out by the goaltending a lot of times. So
yeah, among the 16 playoff teams, they gave up the most high danger chances. I think they were like 23rd in the league overall, but everyone below them missed the playoffs.
Okay, so among playoff teams. So it's an important distinction because we expect them to be that. But this is one of those games where maybe last year, Allmark and or Swayman is making obviously a couple of those saves, and the Bruins stick around to win the game, which is what Scott's talked about all offseason, which is the goaltending will go down despite still having Swayman. Now, maybe that was a bad game for Korpisalo, and maybe everybody gets more comfortable, and it's not as bad as what we saw last night. But last night's an example of a game that last year they probably would have gotten away with maybe squeaking out a point.
By the way, since you mentioned Linus Ullmark, right before we started recording this Wednesday morning, news broke that he agreed to a 4-year extension with the Ottawa Senators with an average annual value of, guess what, $8.25 million. Same exact money as Jeremy Swayman.
He set the market.
Yeah, that I joked before, but I was saying that like maybe that's actually what Swayman meant by not ruining the market. He just meant Linus Ullmark's market.
Yeah, he just wanted his buddy to get a good contract.
I think the quote was for my goalie brethren or something like that. So we all know Allmark is a brother to him. So he was talking literally.
Uncle Sway. But yeah, so I wanted to read some quotes from Montgomery last night that tie into pretty much all of our opening shifts. So in the post-game interview, he said, we weren't good enough in so many areas. We looked slow the whole game. Should have read the rush better. Korpisalo wasn't the problem. You can't give up 4 backdoor goals. And then he said, every time we tried to push back, we went to the box. They're a smart, disciplined team. That part of the game they beat us at. So, I mean, he didn't want to put the blame on Korpisalo for that. And it's true. Some of the coverage was not good in front of the net. There were plays on the rush that should have been slowed down. I know the broadcast had mentioned Mason Lohrei didn't have a good game. I don't know if you guys felt the same way. I felt like it wasn't his fault. Some of the times that guys were scoring while he was on the ice, but I don't know what you guys thought about the defensive coverage that was out in front of Korpisalo.
Yeah, the Lorai Carlo pairing in particular had a really bad night. Take a little trip to advanced stats corner here. With Lorai Carlo on the ice, nearly 12 minutes of 5-on-5 action, Bruins got out attempted 15-6, outshot 9-2, outscored 3-1. Scoring chances were 10-1 Panthers. High danger chances were 6-0. And guys, do you know who they were matched up against? It was mostly Florida's third and fourth lines. They were not getting the Kachuk or Barkov matchups, and they still got just absolutely caved in. So, again, in the whole spirit of like, don't overreact to one game, I like both Lorai and Carlo. I think they'll both be fine. But I wonder if maybe just for game 2, like, switch your D pairs up already. We think there's going to be a lot of moving around anyways, but that pairing in particular just really didn't work Tuesday night.
Yeah, the Gadjevic goal, that was one where Lorai, Kastelik, and Carlo were not in the right coverage to stop that one.
Well, and that was one that Brian mentioned where like Carlo skates it out of the zone and just gets a little bit of pressure and just does this like soft backhand flip to the opposite blue line to absolutely no one. And it gets turned right back up ice. And like, that was one of a bunch. I wrote something along the lines of, huh? Or like, what was that in my notes a bunch of times. And that was one of them where it's like, I don't even know like what the thought process was. Like, if you really panicked under pressure like that, which you shouldn't have been because you had time to look around and survey options, but just ice it. Like, at least just live to fight another day. Don't. The soft flip 15 feet up the ice does absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and there was a play in the third period, I believe, where Hampus Lindholm, and I don't want to go down a laundry list of players who had bad games because it literally was everybody, but Hampus Lindholm, mostly everybody, but Hampus Lindholm in the third period, the Bruins defense is, they're kind of regrouping. Not a neutral zone regroup, but more a defensive zone regroup. And the forwards are swinging, and Lindholm just kind of throws it up the wall to nobody. In fact, it was to a Panther. Doesn't make a tape to tape pass to anybody or an attempt to move the puck in an efficient way. And you just see Marchand, who was on the ice, who's at this point passing center ice, turn around, see that the play just died on Lindholm's stick, and he had some words for him going to the bench, probably something along the lines of, try to make a play, like move your feet or make a pass. Like, what are you throwing it away for? So I have a hard time excusing the team because it's the first game of the year. Like, it's 1 of 82. We talked about an episode prior, like the Bruins went to Washington a couple of years back, 18-19 on their banner raising night, lost 6-0 or 6-1. So you would think,
I think it was 7-0. I think they got the extra point.
But you would think that because of that, to my opening shift, Marchand, Pasternak, McAvoy, Carlo, guys who have been there, would be wary of the emotions of playing a team on their banner raising night, let alone the team that's knocked you out 2 years in a row. So, yeah, I was blown away by the lack of, even in game 1, I was blown away by the lack of intensity up and down the lineup. There was no speed. There was no consecutive passes, no plays being made. And that goes for everybody. And I'm sorry, but I can't just blame that on the fact that it's game 1, because it was game 1 for the Panthers too. And the night before, they were at the local Ritz-Carlton getting their ring ceremony, probably having a few glasses of champagne. They're watching their banner get raised before the game. Like, they had a short summer. I hate that excuse when there's two teams out there. And I don't feel as though I love the Bruins training camp games either. They looked sluggish, and it was easy to chalk it up to, well, it's preseason. But guess what? Preseason is where you rev up that intensity for game 1. And I don't think they did a good job at that either. So I'm not totally surprised. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah. So I didn't hear it, but I heard the Morning Brew crew referenced I guess on the radio pregame show, Bob Beers with Jim Montgomery on the pregame interview, like, mentioned that the Bruins felt like they didn't really get everything they wanted out of camp, that it was a little disjointed with 7 preseason games. It felt like it was a little too much like every other day they just have a game versus, having like good long practices. But I don't know, like, everyone kind of has a cramped preseason schedule. Like that can't be an excuse. And again, like, that probably doesn't, once you get into the season, that probably doesn't linger too long, but it certainly seemed to affect them on opening night where, yeah, you could kind of tell like they maybe didn't get in all the work that they wanted. And didn't look like a team that was ready to go and really, hit the ground running.
Yeah, I think they looked like they were on their heels for pretty much the whole game, most shifts. And it's funny because they had 4 goals, right? If you told someone without telling them any of the rest of the context of the game, like, oh, the Bruins scored 4 goals. Well, that's not a bad start to a season, right? Like 4 goals, that's great. But they came late, garbage time. It seemed like the Panthers had already kind of taken their foot off the gas, and you gave up 6. So obviously a 6-4 loss doesn't look as bad as what I think the game actually was. Like you mentioned, that weird goal from that bounced off of Bennett and in, maybe a little bit of karma if you're on the Bruins and you don't like the way Sam Bennett's been playing against you. But yeah, it just, despite only being a 2-goal game by the end of it, for most of it didn't feel very close. Except for maybe when it was 2-1 was the only time you're like, all right, they're back in this. This seems like maybe it'll turn around. But they had that point where it's like, okay, they could have pivoted, and it was more of the same, looking slow, not pressuring, and not having good coverage.
It felt close for all of about 1 minute.
Yeah, it was a shorthanded goal too. It was Zaka's shorthanded goal made it 2-1. And then the Bruins give up a shorthanded goal. So
yeah, I don't know if you guys noticed this on the game broadcast, because it was a very, very short amount of time. But the reason that my opening shift had to do with the leadership group was because there was, in addition to their play, and I love Charlie McAvoy. He's a beast. Love him. And I, in no way right now, am questioning his compete, his competitiveness and how much he cares, because I know he has the highest of compete. But it just in the moment, I just didn't like seeing in the third period, there was a point in time where there was a stoppage, and I think at the time it was like 6-2. I don't think the score was ever 6-1, right? It was 6-2. So it was 6-2. There was like 5 minutes left. I think it was before Pasternak's goal to make it 6-3, before Frederick's goal to make it 6-4. And it showed McAvoy on the bench, and he was kind of like leaning over and like looking down the bench, talking to one of his teammates and like laughing. And don't get me wrong, I'm really not trying to sound like a hardo here, but on opening night, when you're down 6-2 to the team that's knocked you out 2 years in a row, and they're just embarrassing you, and you've all sucked, what's there to be laughing about?
maybe someone told a funny joke.
And that's a problem. Yeah, but you don't. Let's say that happened though. You don't see a problem with that? Like, I don't know. I mean, I just don't like seeing that. Yeah,
I mean,
well, the way that they played was a joke. Maybe that's what they were laughing about.
Could have been.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you guys see that and you don't care, but like, I don't like optically seeing that. Like, you should be pissed that that's how you guys are performing tonight. Like, keep the heads down and then laugh on the plane.
Coach Brian's sending you for sprints. He's hating you next practice.
I'm sure that this, you guys are you guys clearly don't think it's a big deal, and I'm sure people in the comments will probably say, "Oh, he's being a hard ass." But in my opinion, laugh in the locker room, laugh in the private jet home. Like, in the 60 minutes you're playing, get your ass kicked. I don't know what's so funny.
Yeah, like on the surface, I don't really have an issue with it. Like I don't need guys. I don't know. Like I don't need them to look like they're at a funeral when it's game 1 of the season. Like I can keep things in perspective, but optically, on a national TV game, it's not a great look. Like so that would be the bigger thing for me. It's just it's bad optics. Again, because I know like what Charlie McAvoy is like, I'm not worried about how Charlie McAvoy reacts to a bad game. Like he's competitive. I don't think he's gonna treat it like a joke or that he's not gonna take it seriously. But it is just bad optics. Like it just doesn't look good.
That's all I'm saying. Like I said off the top, I'm not questioning his compete or his attitude. Like I know who he is. I've watched him for 7 years. It's just something in the moment. I just don't like it. And no, they shouldn't look like they're at a funeral. I'm not telling them to cry. I'm not telling them to throw sticks. But maybe be talking to your teammates like, okay, we got to do this, and this. Like be pointing on the ice. Like they should be trying to get better in those 60 minutes. And I just didn't like it. I'm not trying to be a hard ass. It just, once the game's over, it's over. But in the game, try to get better each shift, especially when you're losing 6-2.
Right. And also because you're playing this team again in less than a week. They're in your building Monday afternoon. So you want to build some sort of positive momentum late in that game or find something that works that you can carry forward and say, okay, it shouldn't have taken us 50 minutes to get to this, but like, all right, now we found a little bit of something. Like at least we pushed back. So, and they did get 2 late goals. I don't know if they, were really playing all that great even when they scored those, but I don't know. Maybe it's something they can cling to.
Yeah, that was a positive. I mean, I definitely think you can sit there after the game and say, well, we stuck with it. We didn't give up. That's great. Anything you can hang your hat on after that performance. And like I said, it's game 1, 81, 81 more games to go. It's not the end of the world at all. No one here is saying that, but they got to pick it up. Like, and this stems back to some of the preseason games. Like the season's here, and you're in the toughest division in hockey, and you just have to. They got to get to know each other pretty quickly. Zadorov's talking about how we're still getting used to each other. We'll be fine, and I don't disagree with that at all. But you got Montreal coming into town. You got the fans that are going to be excited, and you have to start getting sharper. And
almost certainly Swayman's got to be starting,
yeah.
right? Like,
yeah,
I feel like that's a layup of a decision right there. Start Swayman on home ice. He's gonna get the ovation. He's, people probably wouldn't want to see Korpisalo back-to-back nights after what happened in game 1. So I feel like it's almost certain Swayman starts on the home opener.
I think Swayman might start like 4 in a row. Like I could see him starting all 3 of these home games.
I thought Swayman was going to start the second period last night. I was like, throw him back in there. It's time.
I wouldn't mind seeing him start 81 games in a row at this point. after last night.
Yeah, no, I was getting texts from friends. They were like, Swayman better start the next 81. And I was like, I think he should start the second period. They're like, okay, 81 2/3. So he might not be able to handle that workload, but I do think you'll see him play stretches where he's going, like you said, like 4 in a row, whereas it used to just be back and forth at most 2 in a row. So anyway, if you have tickets to opening night, I think your chances are pretty good of seeing Swayman. I did want to talk about something that definitely affected the mental part of the game and their chances of winning, which was penalties and bad power play. So taking penalties, the penalty kill looked okay. I mean, they scored shorthanded. Like I mentioned, Zacha. PK looked better than the power play. Like their PK had more chances offensively, it felt like, than the power play. And they took some really dumb penalties. Max Jones chopped the linesman's arm. It looked like he was trying to chop it off, and I know it was an accident, but
shouldn't have been standing there.
Yeah, I mean, I know that guy comes in last minute to try to break it up and he's not anticipating it, but it just looks bad. It's one of those ones like if the referees didn't let cooler heads prevail, they could have ejected him but they understood that it wasn't on purpose. It just looked bad. It was a bad look. And then there was a lot, like Zadorov gets a slashing call. Like there was a lot of penalties in the game that were instigated. And some of them came from scrums and whatnot. And then there's the Frederick one, like we mentioned, he throws the gloves down. No one else tries to fight. But taking that many penalties certainly did not do them any favors.
No, definitely not. It was a parade to the box. It's tough to get into a 5-on-5 rhythm when you're always going to the penalty box as well. But to Scott's opening shift, the mental game that the Bruins are losing, it's the best way to get under Florida's skin is to not directly go after Tkachuk and Bennett. It's to go after the ones that they care about, right? Which is play Barkov hard, play Verhaeghe hard, play Reinhart hard. I'm not saying dirty, but play them hard. Maybe get in their face. But the most important way to get under Florida's skin is to get ahead of them on a scoreboard. When teams are ahead, they're comfortable. There's no reason for Matthew Tkachuk to fight Trent Frederick when they're up 6-2. But if Florida's down 4-2 because the Bruins are playing great hockey, and maybe now Tkachuk's trying to do something to help his team, and now Frederick gets his chance to get his licks in. So I think to Scott's point earlier, the Bruins need to figure out how to play good hockey against the Panthers. Not that they haven't played bad hockey against them in the past, but obviously going forward this year, the Panthers are so under their skin. The Bruins need to figure out a way to overcome that and just focus on the game and playing the game the right way. When they do that, the scoreboard should show that, and then naturally you'll get Florida pissed. And now here comes your opportunities to maybe get some licks in that you're clearly wanting.
Yeah, and like a couple new guys trying to jump into the rivalry and, kind of getting sucked into the Panthers game. Like Max Jones takes 2 penalties after the whistle. Nikita Zadorov takes a cross-checking penalty, coming kind of crashing into a post-whistle scrum. Which, if that was a cross-check, then I don't know how you don't call Sam Bennett's in front of the net where he just drilled who was it from behind?
Geeky.
It was Geeky. Just like drilled him from behind, cross-check right to the numbers. Somehow not a penalty, but Zadorov later in the game slashing behind the play. Like the game was out of hand at that point, so like I get it doesn't really matter, but again, it all just sort of feeds into you're losing that mental battle against the Panthers. Like, they walked up to that line. Maybe they do some stuff that they get away with. Absolutely. I don't know how they get away with as much as they do, but they do. The Bruins, I don't know, maybe they're just not good enough at disguising it because they get caught. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what the Panthers want. Like they want to annoy you, agitate you, and get you to react. And the Bruins looked like a team that was happy to keep doing it and keep going to the box.
Well, I mean, Kastelik and Greer fighting that happened really early in the game. And it was like, okay, that was the Bruins' previous fighter versus what appears to be the Bruins' fighter this season, which is Mark Kastelik. And even though it was at points hard to watch, it was certainly entertaining where you're like, okay, hockey's back. Like there's all these fights, attempted fights, scrums. It wasn't pretty. There was one goal that the Panthers had that ended in a brawl behind the net. It was just, it was like, okay, yeah, this is hockey. Hockey season's here. They don't like each other still, obviously. That's just how it's going to be with those two teams probably for the foreseeable future. They would both have to get significantly worse, or one of them would have to get significantly worse for that rivalry to go away, but I don't think that we're anywhere near that. So I did want to say that play where Geeky got cross-checked, he had a really good shift that shift. He got a shot on goal, gets cross-checked, gets back up, gets possession back, even though he had to get up off the ground and continued a possession. I thought that he didn't have the worst game if we're trying to maybe find a few people that did look like they were mentally in the right spot. I think Morgan Geeky would be someone that I would put there.
Yeah, he had a few good shifts. I don't just like, I wasn't, too impressed with that line 5-on-5, but then again, it was kind of a team wide thing. So I don't want to harp too much on one line, but what I can say is the team speed was lacking last night. And I don't think the Bruins are the fastest team in the league, even when they're clicking, but they're certainly faster than they showed last night. So what's long term? What's the solve here? Is it Matt Poitras getting back into the lineup? That'll certainly help. I'm not sold on Geeky on that line with Coyle and Marchand, and it's not all because of Geeky. Like I said, like Marchand needs to get back up to his speed. So
yeah,
it's tough to judge after one game.
I thought Coyle was way too quiet overall.
Yeah,
zero shots for him. Like, yeah, so definitely not on Geeky. I do think you need Poitras or maybe it's Tyler Johnson, but like some more skill in that middle nine. I know you guys or Brian maybe said, you liked most of Frederick's game. I thought that third line really struggled. Like, good thing they did score a goal because otherwise I'd really be killing them. Like, at least that saved their night a little bit, and that was a nice play. But they spent a lot of time in their own zone. That goal that they scored was actually the only shot that line had at 5-on-5. They got outshot 10-1 when they were on the ice. Like, they were on for 2 goals against. Look, Max Jones missed most of camp, so that probably hurt him. Justin Brazeau dealt with a little bit of an injury the last week and a half of camp. So, again, to the point of, like, this was just a disjointed training camp, and they just didn't look ready. Like, that line didn't look ready, but I think Poitras, healthy and up to speed, would be a big help there. Just because you need some more skill, you need some more playmaking, someone who can make something happen offensively, and he certainly is someone who can do that.
Yeah, I don't think any of the analytics would benefit any of the Bruins on the ice last night. So when I talk about Frederick, I'm more so talking about his give a shit meter that I saw last night that I think the rest of the team could have used at times. But yeah, I think what you said is true, Scott. They need a little bit more there, and Max Jones, it's interesting because he didn't have the benefit of a whole camp. We talked last episode about Riley Tufte. Cole Koepke didn't really show too much last night in the fourth line. I thought he had a good preseason, but there is a name down in Providence that I thought had a really strong camp, and Boston didn't feel was ready yet. But that's Kuntar. And I just think that if what we saw last night kind of continues and the Bruins need maybe somebody who can make some plays in that bottom six and get under a team's skin just naturally by the way that they play, I think he could be a call up at some point. I think he should be maybe the first Providence call up. I would circle as the season goes along here. Not so much after last night, but maybe going forward as a name that could provide something.
Yeah, I feel like they have enough Kuntars. Like I thought the fourth line was, again, it's relative to the rest of the team, but I thought they were pretty good last night. Beecher, Kastelik, Koepke. They at least spent some time in the offensive zone. And Kastelik was physical, which we saw all preseason. I don't think Kuntar has the skill level to change things that way. He could certainly come in and and hit and agitate and be physical. But I kind of feel like the Bruins have enough guys in that bottom six that can do that, even if they didn't all do that on opening night specifically.
I think Brian's point is that, like, if you put him in for Koepke, there's a different dynamic than, like, if Koepke doesn't keep up to, the speed of the NHL, or if you don't necessarily think you're getting that much from him, you could plug Kutar in that spot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I thought Koepke actually looks pretty good, though.
Yeah. Well, look, I think maybe, I don't know if I'm sounding like I'm coming across really hard on last night. I don't know how you could say many players had a good game last night. Honestly.
I'm not, but I'm saying relative to the rest of the team.
I feel like every time we bring up somebody, they did it. They lost 6-4 or 6-2. They sucked.
I'm saying the fourth line was not your problem last night. Like,
I'm not saying it's their problem. I'm saying
compared to everyone else, they had a solid game.
I'm not saying the fourth line's their problem.
I mean,
Scott,
if you want to put Trevor Kutar in over Brad Marchand, like, Brad Marchand had a rough game. David Pastrnak had a rough game.
Now you're just being crazy.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting, is to put Kutar in over Brad Marchand. No, what I'm saying is,
I'm just saying that the problem wasn't the fringe, like, roster guys. The problem was the entire core of your team.
Okay, well, you guys are talking about how Max Jones hasn't done enough, and so at some point, if that continues, what I'm saying is Kutar brings something that is an element of what the Florida Panthers bring that pisses off all Bruins fans and their players, which is somebody who plays hard, goes to the net, and just gets under your skin. So I'm saying to keep an eye on that as the season goes along. I'm not saying to put him in for Pastrnak or Marchand.
I agree with you, Brian. I think that if Max Jones doesn't prove himself, and if Koepke doesn't bring enough to the table, which we still don't know, it's only one game, then that would be a good person to bring up.
Like, he's not going to be in the lineup once Patra's healthy anyways.
Potentially, but Max Jones too. Like, I would see him as someone who doesn't have, like, a definitely solid position in the roster right now either.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Like, look, missing just about all of training camp hurts. Like,
yeah.
Unfortunately, like, Max Jones is someone you're going to have to give a little more time. I don't think he should have been on the third line on opening night, knowing that he needs more time. Like, he played 11 minutes his last preseason game, so they were clearly still ramping him up. I don't know. It's a little odd. I know there's cap reasons why Tyler Johnson's not signed yet, but, like, yeah, I mean, Max Jones shouldn't have been on the third line to start the season.
Yeah, and the Kutar thing, what that won't address is their team's need for speed, which is what the original conversation was in the first place. So, Patra is a guy that obviously helps that when he's back in the lineup. And then beyond him, it's either going to have to be the guys we saw last night figuring it out. But, speed doesn't just come from foot speed. It comes from decision-making, moving the puck quicker. The old adage is the puck moves faster than your skates. So the transition game needs to be much better. Montgomery talking about the defense, reading the rush better. So team speed is far more than foot speed. But as far as guys that actually have the foot speed as specific attributes, Patra's there. Obviously, this is why it's frustrating Lysell didn't do enough to earn a spot, because he's a kid that can make plays and has that foot speed, but doesn't appear to bring much of anything else, at least on a consistent basis. So is it Tyler Johnson? Maybe maybe in a non-optimal situation, but he's a guy that can bring something. So I'd keep an eye on that going forward as well. But this could be a problem if the Bruins. This could be a problem down the stretch if the Bruins aren't if they're not backing off opponents with their speed. They're not as difficult to play against. I mean, that's where the NHL is going. Despite how big they got in the back end of the offseason, you still have to have that element of speed. And I'm willing right now to chalk it up to it's game one, but it's going to have to change.
I was listening to Morning Brew before we started recording, and I'll ask you guys the question that Billy Jaffe asked, like, right off the top, and they kind of downplayed it. But do you think the Bruins are actually too slow as a team, or they just play too slow on opening night?
Second one.
that's kind of what I lean towards for now. But I think like as we've been talking, as Brian's been outlining, like it's something to watch. It is odd that at end of last season, Cam Neely says they have to get faster, and then you let Jake DeBrusk, one of your best skaters, walk. Fabian Lysell, who would be one of your best skaters, doesn't make the team. And, the guys you bring in are all, I think, are mostly good skaters, but like they're not burners. So, I don't know that they actually got faster overall. Like they might be slightly slower than last year. And for, someone whose internal assessments were that they weren't fast enough, like I do think it's something very interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, DeBrusk speed you lose Heinen speed. You're not losing speed from JVR or Shattenkirk, but if you gain Potter back for a whole season, there's some speed right there that you didn't have last year for the last 2/3 of it. But again, it's for in my opinion, the speed starts with just it's team speed, it's decision making with the puck. Last night, their decision making was non-existent. Their skates were in mud and their brains were in the clouds. They weren't making any passes or any plays. So that's going to have to obviously change and get sharper, and it will as the season goes along. But
the top line, like this top line should be fast. It's built with some great skaters and obviously talent. So, but did it look fast yesterday? No, it's not going to look that slow for the rest of the season. So I think to answer your question, I think more likely than not, it's not that they're just not built with the speed. I think that they weren't playing up to what they could do, especially top six guys were not.
Speaking of the top line, another thing to monitor, we don't know exactly what Elias Lindholm's injury was. Bruins never even specified upper or lower body, but Elias Lindholm has been struggling on faceoffs. He really struggled in his couple preseason games. He went 3 of 9 last night. It was way down on like number of faceoffs taken. So Charlie Coyle, Pavel Zacha, and Mark Kastelik all took more faceoffs. Elias Lindholm is usually one of the best faceoff guys in the league. He takes a ton of them in all situations, and he wins around 55%. So I have to think there's like a lingering effect of whatever his injury is there, but something else to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that's usually a sign of some sort of upper body injury, like you're indicating. I see it in college hockey all the time. Guys, your best faceoff guy has to miss time, and then when he comes back, he's not taking any faceoffs for a while still, because that's one of the harder things to do well when you have, say, a wrist injury or some sort of upper body injury in the arms. So yeah, that I hadn't noticed that, but I'm glad you pointed it out. Just to look at.
That is a positive from the game. Outside of the concern you bring up, Scott, is that it wasn't pretty, but that entire top line did get their first points of the year. Lindholm gets his first assist as a Bruin, his first point as a Bruin, which you don't know with players, that could be something in the back of their mind, like a little monkey off the back. Okay, I got an assist right away. Pasternak, obviously, he's a goal scorer. He had a very, very quiet game. I would say he had a bad game, but he does find a way to get a goal on the score sheet, which for a goal scorer, that's probably good for his psyche. McAvoy, who had a down year offensively last year, relatively to the 2 previous years, gets a goal and an assist last night. So that's probably helping him a little bit, despite maybe that's why he was laughing in the third period. But it's good that everybody got those touches, or those guys got those touches. Zacha getting a goal early. Now next in line would be that second line. Marchand gets his first. Coyle had a really good chance in the second period, but just waited too long.
He had like a shorthanded breakaway that I thought he was going to finish, and that was the one. The puck went right behind Bobrovsky. It just went right behind both his skates and out the other side. And I was like,
it looked like he had time to get get it onto his backhand, tuck it inside the post, and it almost seemed like he didn't think he was going to have that time, so he kind of rushed it. But yeah, I mean, he had Bobrovsky way down and out. By the way, I didn't think Bobrovsky had a good game at all. Like, he looked shaky too. The Bruins just didn't test him enough.
Yeah, half the Bruins skaters last night got their first point of the season. So look, that's one of the benefits to the garbage time goals, right? Like, you got half the roster feeling like, okay,
moral victory Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got to try to find some.
Patriots podcast.
I was gonna say, yeah.
You got to try to find.
Hey, it's Drake May time.
Yo, isn't that rude? Thought that broke during your segment.
Yeah, I was on the air with Andy Hart and Christian Arcand. Luckily, we had just wrapped up like all the actual Bruins talk, and then that broke.
Yeah, how rude! I was like, how dare they interrupt Scott like that?
Scott, where can we find your articles? You can find them at. Hey, we got breaking news. Drake May is named starter for the Patriots.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say overall, guys, because we got less than 10 minutes here, but my biggest disappointment last night was just not the fact that they lost the game. You're playing the defending Stanley Cup champions. Florida is obviously a great team, the best in the league as we stand here today. And I was just disappointed with the lack of focus and the lack of execution up and down the lineup. And I just, I can't chalk that up to game one because they weren't sharp in camp, and every team, it's their first game. So you can't just give that excuse. Everybody else looks pretty sharp out there.
Yeah, to that point, like, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the other what the hell was that plays that I had notes on. We mentioned Carlo
writing WTF next to stuff in your notes.
No, I actually ended up going with "huh" in all caps, HUH. So, but like, third period, puck gets flipped in on Korpisalo, completely harmless play, and he just kind of like bobbles it around, and Sam Reinhart almost swoops in and scores. And like, he just clears it away at the last second, but I was like, what was that? Like, he looks like, it almost like he thought like the whistle blew or something. Like, it was bizarre. Nikita Zadorov on a penalty kill, a minute into the kill. So you need to get your killers changed off. Gets the puck on his stick with plenty of time and flips it out to center ice instead of sending it down the length of the rink. I'm like, and then he can't change, and neither could Carlo. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Like, just send it down the ice and change off. Like, it was baffling. Another one. This is in the second period. Andrew Peeke wins a battle in the corner in the defensive zone. Goes to move the puck up the boards for a breakout. Justin Brazeau is just like aimlessly drifting towards the center of the ice and doesn't even see the pass come up the boards. And it gets turned over. And I'm like, where's Justin Brazeau? Like, what was he doing? Like, there was nothing else going on. He needed to be there for the pass up the boards and was just like lost. And again, like, I'm picking individual plays, but it just speaks to the overall just like lack of focus, execution. Guys just, I don't know, it's seemingly just not having their heads in it at times.
We can call that segment WTF Wednesday.
Where does coaching lie in this? I mean, Monty's talking after the game how like they didn't do anything. It's like, it's not like the coaches aren't saying the right things before the game, you would imagine. So is it fair to ask, like, why is that message not getting clear on game one?
Maybe special teams, like, decisions could have been different. There's,
I mean, I think it's fair. Like, I mean, listen, when your team's not ready to start the season on time, absolutely you can look at coaching. And again, like, I'll reference that pregame interview he had with Ryan Johnson and Bob Beers. Like, yeah, if you feel like you didn't get the most out of camp, or it felt rushed or jumbled or whatever, like, maybe you look back and say, like, did they really have the best plan for camp? Or should something have been handled differently in terms of how they were getting ready for the season? It's fair. Like, at some point players have to be ready to play, and the Bruins didn't look like they were. But yeah, absolutely, you can look at coaching when it's like a team-wide thing of them not looking ready to go.
Does Boston historically reserve that last preseason game for the majority of the main roster? Or does it depend on if they're home or away? Because if they're away, they won't travel the main guys. If they're home, maybe they'll address them.
I think it's that. Like, I'm just thinking anecdotally. I don't obviously have numbers on this, but I feel like a lot of preseasons, it's the main roster is going to play the home games, and if that last game's on the road, they're probably not going to travel for it. So that's my guess on that historically. Just thinking back.
Yeah, and this year it was a bunch of Providence call-ups get sent to play the last game, which was on the road in Washington. So yeah, a lot of the regular guys did not play that last preseason game.
All right. Well, for the Boston Bruins, it's time to wake up. The season has started, and we have the home opener tomorrow night against the Canadiens. So if you're not ready for that one, there's going to be some serious issues.
By the way, just want to confirm that is the home opener. For some reason, Ryan Callahan kept saying they're in Montreal on the ESPN broadcast. Like he corrected Butchergrass said they had their home opener Thursday. Ryan Callahan corrected him, said they're in Montreal Thursday, and then they have their home opener Saturday. And then Butchergrass didn't correct him. It was it was weird. But yes, can confirm that game is in Boston on Thursday.
Yes, it is in Boston. We'll be there. That is funny. It is, and it is hard. I know this isn't a mistake made because they're in the studio, but they had to broadcast that game from Connecticut. They weren't there. Yeah, they weren't there because the hurricane. They said
right.
Out of an abundance of caution, they weren't sending the broadcasters down there, so they broadcast that game off of a TV, which is not easy to do because you're missing out on a lot of stuff that's out of frame. Whatever's out of frame, you can't see unless they have other monitors of the other angles available to them, which I'm not sure if they did, but yeah, it's not super easy, and it's the atmosphere is just weird. I don't like doing it.
If any producers over at ESPN happen to listen to the Skate podcast, a little piece of advice I would give for the viewer at home would be to cut down on some of the camera cuts every 30 seconds. Like the play is going down ice and they're showing a close up of the goalie's face or the coach. It's like no. Show the widescreen of the game of the play and show players and coaches in between the whistles. It's a little too much.
Feel free to mix in a replay of a penalty once in a while.
Yeah, or an important shot. Sometimes
right.
I'm like, well, I want to see that save again, or what? Nah.
There was one
good save Korpisalo made that they just didn't show again, and they also intermissions. No analysis, no coverage of what had just happened. It was like a concert, and they're out in Utah, and they're having a grand old time for Utah's opening night, having a party. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get first game in a new city is a big deal, so I sort of get that. But the replay thing, there was, I forget which penalty it was, but there was one that Butchergrass thought they called a penalty on the Panthers, and then they did the side-by-side ad where an ad plays but you're still seeing the game in the split screen, and then they came back from that and he goes, it's actually a penalty on the Bruins and the Panthers will go to the power play, and then there was no replay of what the penalty was. I was like, all right, well, I guess we'll just guess on that.
Yeah, that would drive me crazy, especially when I'm doing color commentary. If I'm talking about something and then they don't show it, I get annoyed. I'm like, come on, guys, that's what we need to show right now. But yeah.
Well, as it pertains to a hockey broadcast, I would say less is more. Don't overproduce. It's people want to see the play happen, and less cuts and more replays.
Also, as it pertains to hockey broadcasts, my first NESN broadcast is Friday, and then Saturday we have another game. So I'll be at Matthews for their Northeastern's last season there. The women's game, BU Northeastern, 7:00 on Friday, and then Saturday at 6, it's UNH at UConn. And one of my new broadcast partners is Gigi Marvin, who just retired from the PWHL. She played for PWHL Boston last year. I actually have a meeting with her.
wow.
That's why I'm hopping off right now, because I got to have a Zoom call with her and one of the other coaches. So, and I think I'm allowed to say this. I have a new show on Nesson before every Friday Hockey East game. Me and Eric Galanti are hosting a new show called This Week in Hockey East. I think it used to be a podcast. Now it's going to be on Nesson, a half-an-hour show every Friday. So so this wonderful backdrop you'll see, including Scott's puck space, wherever that went, is in the background of every episode, or will be. We recorded yesterday the first episode, so that'll air Friday. Yeah, just a lot of hockey.
Good. Yeah. Watch Bridget on Nesson Friday night.
I'll be watching. All right.
I think I'm going to be on WEI Friday night as well with Megan Ottolini and Justin Turpin. So you can watch Bridget on TV, put EI on your radio. Brian, what are you going to be on Friday?
Yeah. Just come visit me in Watertown, and we can just watch it and listen to it all together.
Open invite.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy Bruins Canadians, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.